Continuing from our topic, balancing payment and payments on account. The next question is Chine's income tax and capital gain tax liabilities for the tax year 21-22 were 25,000 and 5,000 respectively. Of the 25,000 income tax liability, tax of 5,400 was deducted at source under pay as you earn system. She made payment on account totaling 18,000 for the tax year 21-22. What is the balancing payment Junaid should pay and when it is due? So first we need to consider how to calculate the balancing payment. Balancing payment is calculated as total tax liability minus pay as you earn minus payments on account. So first of all, the total tax liability is 25,000 plus 5,000, this is 30,000. Next, the pay as you earn amount is given as 5,400 and the payments on account is 18,000. After deducting pay as you earn and payments on account, the remaining figure would be 6,600. So balancing payment is 6,600. The amount is due to be paid on 31st January 23. So our correct option would be B. Next topic is late payment interest. Late payment interest is charged from the date the tax was due to be paid to the date of payment. A taxpayer pays his payments on account for the tax year 21-22 on 31st March 22 and 31st August 22. The balancing payment is paid on 30th April 23. Identify the payments on which interest will be charged and state the period for which interest will be charged. So first payment on account is due on 31st January 22 and that taxpayer has paid that amount on 31st March 22. So it is 2 months late. So the 2 months period interest should be charged there on first payment of account. Second payment on account is payable on 31st July 22 and is paid on 31st August 22. It is 1 month late. So for the period of 1 month interest would be charged. And balancing payment is due on 31st January 23 and it was actually paid on 30th April 23. So it was 3 months late. So for the period of 3 months interest would be charged. Repayment interest. It may be possible that interest may be paid by HMRC on our payment of tax if applicable. If applicable, it runs from the later of date the tax was due or the date HMRC actually received the tax to the date of repayment. So first we need to identify what is the later date. From two dates, the date the tax was due or the date HMRC actually received the tax. From these two dates we need to identify which was later. From this later date to the date of repayment, this is the period for which we have to receive interest. Claims for overpayment relief for the tax year 21-22, the relief must be claimed by 5th April 26. Penalties for late payment. If tax is paid more than 1 month late, then the 5% of amount of tax. If it is paid more than 6 months late, then additional 5%. And if it is more than 12 months late, it is additional 5%. means up to from 1 to 6 months. If tax is paid late and the period is from 1 to 6 months, the penalty is 5%. And if tax is paid more than 6 months late but less than 12 months late, additional 5% means total 10% of tax liability would be charged as penalty. And in case the tax is paid more than 12 months late, then total 15% of tax liability is charged as penalty. A taxpayer's balancing payment due for the tax year 21-22 is 5,000. Only 1,200 of this was paid on 31st January 23. Set out the interest and penalties that will be payable and state the implication of continued non-payment of liability. So here the amount that is payable is 3,800. 1,200 is paid. If the date is 31st January 23. Interest is paid between 28th February 23 to 31st July 23, then 5% penalty would be charged. And if tax is paid between 31st July 23 to 31st January 24, then additional 5% means in total 10% interest would be charged as penalty. And in case the tax payment is made after 31st January 24, then it is in total 15% of amount of tax liability that would be charged as penalty. And while in the case of interest is payable up to the date of payment from 31st January 23 to up to the date of payment. Up to the date of payment. Whatever period it is, interest would be charged for that period at the rate of 2.6%. Penalties for submission of incorrect return. If the taxpayer has submitted an incorrect return, then there is a penalty for such incorrect return, but the percentage of penalty depends upon the taxpayer's behavior. If it is deliberate and concealed, then the maximum penalty is 100%. Minimum penalty in case of unprompted disclosure are 30%, and minimum penalty if case of prompted disclosure is 50%, and so on. The penalty in case of deliberate but not concealed, and only in case of careless behavior it could be 0. Sarah received NSNI investment account interest of 5,300 in the tax year 21-22, which she deliberately omitted from her self-assessment. So the taxpayer behavior is mentioned here, deliberately omitted from her self-assessment tax return for the tax year. She did not attempt to conceal, not conceal. So it lies in this category, deliberate but not concealed. HMRC discovered the error from records collected from NSNI, and Sarah then made a prompted disclosure of the error. So it will be the percentage of 15% that would be it is a percentage of 35%, because this is deliberate but not concealed, and minimum penalty would be 35%. Sarah is higher rate taxpayer. And she had already used her saving income nil rate band on other income. What is the minimum penalty that HMRC may impose on Sarah in respect of this error? So first of all, we need to calculate the tax liability. Her investment income is 5,300, and as she is higher rate taxpayer, at this investment income she would have been charged 40% as tax. So it would be 2120, that is the amount of tax liability. And on this 2120 tax liability, she have to pay a penalty at the rate of 35%, as already we have identified that the error is deliberate but not concealed. And also they have made us clear that this is a prompted disclosure. So it will be 35% of 2120. $742. So 742 is a penalty she has to pay. Then is the penalty for failure to notify liability to tax, like income tax, CGT, corporation tax, VAT and NIC. It depends on the date the return is filed. If the return is filed after the due date, then it is £100 of fixed penalty. If it is submitted, if the return is submitted 3 months late, then the daily penalty of £10 per day and maximum 90 days in addition to £100 fixed penalty, and so on. The other rates have been given us. Penalty of failure to notify liability to tax, like income tax, CGT. Example is Florence filed her return for the tax year 21-22 showing income tax payable 6400, 8 months late. As she has filed her return 8 months late, so it will be in this. Next is in addition to the initial £100 late filing penalty, what is the maximum further penalty that she can be charged for filing the tax return late? So read the question carefully. They are not asking us to calculate and write the total penalty. They are asking us to calculate the penalty in excess of 100 late filing penalty, in addition to initial 100 late filing penalty. Means in excess of £100 of late filing penalty, what is the maximum further penalty that she can be charged for filing return? So it would be 5% of tax due plus above penalty, and above penalty would be 900 for 90 days, £10 per day. And 5% of 6500 325. So it is total 1225 of additional penalty in excess of late filing penalty of £100 that she has to pay. Another question, Quinn will not pay the balancing payment in respect of her tax liability for the tax year 21-22 until 17th October 23. What is the total percentage penalty which Quinn will be charged by HMRC in respect of the late balancing payment for the tax year 21-22? As the period from 31st January to 17th October is lies between 6 to 12 months, so it is a total percentage penalty of 10% that would be charged. Now it is of penalty of failure or to notify liability to tax. It is a penalty of failure to notify liability to tax. Belinda paid the balancing amount of income tax of 7,400 for the tax year 2021 on 10th March 22. So Belinda will have to pay interest on late paid tax from 31st January to 10th March 22. This is right because she has to pay tax on 31st January and she has paid tax on 10th March. The difference of this period attract the interest, and this statement is true. Second, Belinda will have to pay 100 fixed penalty because the payment is late. It is not about the because the payment is late. If tax is paid late, then it is a 5% penalty that is charged on the tax liability. So this statement is wrong. It is not 100 of fixed amount. And Belinda will have to pay 5% penalty because the payment is more than 30 days late. This is correct. Next question is, Rajesh is a sole trader. He correctly calculated his self-assessment payment on account for tax 21-22 and pays these on the due date. Rajesh paid the correct balancing payment of 1200 for the tax year 21-22 on 30th June 23. What penalties and interest may Rajesh be charged as a result of the late balancing payment for the tax year 21-22? For penalties, we know that if the payment is up to 6 months late, this is a penalty of 5%. More than 1 month and less than 6 months late, if the payment of tax is more than 1 month and less than 6 months late, then there is a penalty of 5%. So 5% penalty he has to pay because the date of payment is 31st January 23 and he actually paid on 30th June 23. So this is a period of between 6 months. So interest of 5% would be charged. So 5% of 1200 would be 60. So 60 of penalty would be charged. And interest would be charged from 31st January to 30th June for the period of 5 months. And this would be 1200 at the rate of 2.6% for the period of 5 months. It would be 13. The rate of other penalties, offences, penalty of fraud and negligence on claiming reduced payment on account. The payment on account should have paid, less payment on account actually paid. And a failure to keep and retain required record, this is a penalty of up to £3,000 per tax year.